Australia. Lanco Group is known for delivering sustainable, efficient solutions. By working closely with clients, Lanco Group is able to meet the complex infrastructure requirements for residential, commercial and industrial developments on time, on budget. Find out more at lancogroup.com.au. Lanco Group, your business partner for engineering solutions.
Buying your electricity from the big energy companies is now the most expensive way to power your home. In fact, the average electricity bill in Australia has more than doubled in the last 15 years, but not for the ones who went solar. Unlike your electricity bill, the price of solar has actually come down, and there's also government rebates available. So what are you waiting for? Join the 2 million households already saving hundreds of dollars every year. See how much your roof could be making you at solarpowerco.com.au. Go solar and get $500 cash back with the Solar Power Co, Australia's most trusted solar brand. solarpowerco.com.au.
You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR. Hello, Josh Parrish. Welcome to another episode of SUFN, or State of Our Football Nation. How are you, mate? Big week in the football world. In fact, it's been a big week around Australia. So much news, so much football news. We've had a little seismic activity, so it suggests to me the omens are telling me that something big is going to happen. Melbourne got well and truly shaken. A couple of stories have fallen out of that. We're going to follow them in this next hour. But and we've got a couple of special guests, and one of them is going to talk to us about a very important milestone. Can you believe that the women's game in this country is about to notch up 100 years?
George, I'm so shaken by that statistic. I might have to go stand in a doorway to protect myself.
Do you know, someone rang me and said to me, George, it's all right. The safest spot for you, mate, is the bath. Get in the bath and you'll be fine. I said, one problem with that, I understand it's reasonable suggestion. We don't have a bath in the house. And he, of course, was nonplussed after that. He had nothing to offer. But look, it's interesting times. To all those people who survived the earthquake, which I think ranged pretty close to 6 on the Richter scale yesterday, well done. A really good rumble. It did open our eyes to so many things. I hope that everyone is safe and didn't get into too much trouble. We did see some bricks and mortar come down in South Yarra. Mm-hmm. I hear there's a bit of a rumble going on at Lakeside, which is not far from South Yarra. We're going to talk about that too. What's going on? Western United got I believe, some notation telling them they could play their games, or they were intending to play their games at Lakeside Stadium, which is, of course, the home of the NPL club and the 4-time national champions, South Melbourne FC, and there's a bit of a brouhaha coming out of that. Yeah,
indeed. South Melbourne are not particularly impressed by this plan of Western United's to play games at Lakeside. They feel they have sort of exclusivity over football activities if they so choose under the terms of their lease. I haven't seen the lease, and I'm not a commercial lawyer, so take anything we say on that front with a big grain of salt.
Grain of salt, yeah.
But it is an interesting conundrum because, you know, Western United would not and have not announced this without some consultation and have been working on it for quite a while with the APL and with the Stadium Trust. So there seems to be some sort of breakdown between the Stadium Trust, South Melbourne, and Western United that needs to be sorted out here. But from my understanding and the sort of research and hearsay that's gone around in the Twitter sphere today, George, South needs to prove a business case that Western United playing there, you know, in their off season, essentially, because the A-League games that will be played at Lakeside and the NPL season will not overlap. South has to prove that, you know, Western United is infringing upon their business. And I'm not sure how straightforward that process is going to be, but certainly not a great look for the APL, I suppose, given the way this has all gone down.
Look, I've heard from South Melbourne, and they're very willing to talk. I think you'll get a chance to talk to their chair, Bill Papastadiadis, who's also the head of the Greek Orthodox community in Victoria. he's very keen to have a chat. And so make what you will of it tomorrow. It'll be an interesting discussion all round. Look, it's a terrific venue, especially since the Athletics Trust moved into that area a number of years ago, and that's become a world-class facility, a state of excellence or a centre of excellence for athletics in the area, has really, shone. The area is used by so many people. The ground is a beautiful ground, and the cityscape. There's no better place to go and watch a game. If you're in Melbourne and you want to go and see a football game, I don't think there's a more attractive venue to actually watch the game and watch this magnificent cityscape in the distance. So look, stand by. I'll be watching and listening tomorrow to your Zoom discussion with Bill Papastadiadis.
Yeah, looking forward to that. We will catch up with Western United CEO Chris Pelavanis at some point. Wasn't in a position to talk today, but possibly next week we'll get a chance to chat to him because they're very upfront about all the different hoops they've had to jump through with regards to getting the stadium approved, which it seems to have been progress on that front on construction of the new Western United Stadium, Tarneet. They will ostensibly be in a position to actually move some dirt soon and get some real physical progress on the stadium as opposed to the bureaucratic progress that's been made over the past couple of years. But they've looked at a lot of different options. Knight Stadium seems to not be in a position to host an A-League game at this point. The infrastructure upgrades required, I think, to do with broadcasting in particular, looked to be a prohibitive cost.
What a great shame, because it's a terrific venue.
It is a fantastic venue to watch football. You're much closer to the pitch than you are at Lakeside.
The atmospherics, you get it's a bit like Lambert Park in the grand old days of NPL. You hear everything, you miss nothing.
Exactly.
And that's for both sides. And
it would have been in
the spectators and for the players.
And it would have been in their heartland as well, in the western suburbs. So, Lakeside is by no means an ideal solution. But I still think it's a great venue, and A-League games, it's certainly good enough to play A-League games there. And it might even strengthen South's case for, hosting national second division games in the future. One thing I would love to see, if it does end up going ahead with Western United, is putting in some temporary stands behind the goals, especially on the lake side of Lakeside, because not only would that make it a lot more atmospheric, you'd also block some of the cold winds coming off the water there that sometimes interfere with late night kickoffs in the NPL. It gets pretty chilly and also a bit windy at times.
Also, it would give you a terrific opportunity to put a couple of cameras back there.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a terrific perspective to watch the game. We've had games, and we've actually had artificial or temporary stands put in there, or seating put in there, and we've had cameras set up, and the ground looks magnificent from that perspective. So I think it's a great idea. Let's see if you can push Bill over the line and make it happen. That'd be exciting.
Well, I can understand why South are upset with this as well, because Lakeside Stadium is their home, regardless of whatever agreements they have in place. Emotionally, it is their home ground, and it feels like a bit of a betrayal or an infidelity for Western United to be encroaching there.
Look, there's an awful lot of that going on at the moment around the world. We're hearing accusations from people like the French saying that the Australians, the great Americans, and the Brits are all very quick to stab in the back. I'm not quite sure this is of that ilk, but I can understand a great many of the South Melbourne hierarchy being upset, because at least they'd want to be in on the discussions. Wouldn't you want them in there from the very beginning? The last thing you'd want is to be left out of any discussions going on about what's happening at Lakeside.
Yeah, and I'm fairly certain they were contacted, but pretty late in the process. I think they were only spoken to about it last night.
Okay, well, you'll find out. I'm sure you'll find out more tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll get clear answers from Bill when he joins us tomorrow. But certainly a dramatic day in Australian football. Never a day goes by, George, without some kind of tension between
fallout.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I do think if this ends up happening, South can stand to benefit in some ways, whether it's compensation, whether it's upgrades to Lakeside as a result of staging the games there, whether it's just the exposure of that venue to a national audience. I don't think it's a lose-lose situation for South Melbourne if Western United play games there. But again, as we said, you can understand why they want to protect their patch.
Look, I whatever you've said there about that is, I think, on the money. But you'd like to get both parties comfortable and happy. The last thing you want is any more division. The game does not need any more division. We talk about State of Our Football Nation on FNR each and every Thursday. You and I have been fronting this program for the better part of the last year. And the last thing we're trying to do is pull people apart. We want to bring the game together. And it would be terrific if we can at least start this campaign in a fulsome way, everybody aware of what's going on, because the new era is upon us. Channel 10, 10 Play, Paramount Plus are up and running. We've seen some FFA Cup action. By the way, this Brisbane mob didn't do too badly. Put 6 away against the visitors who had come an awful long way from the Northern Territory to get pumped. What did you make of that?
Yeah, they were a little outmatched. I think it was a bit of a surprise that Casuarina got to that round in the first place. Traditionally, it's Hellenic Athletic, the Greek club from the Northern Territory, from Darwin, who dominate in that conference, the Norzone Premier League, or whatever they're calling it these days. And only one Northern Territory team gets through to the round of 32. So they actually call it the FFA Cup final when the two teams play off for that spot, which I find very charming. But it was a big upset. Even though they're third in the league, Casuarina, I don't think they really were particularly competitive in that fixture, but it's really no shame at all because they went further than anybody expected.
What did you make of the boys in orange?
Oh, very good. I mean, they had a bad start to the season, Lions FC, but they are probably the biggest club in Queensland. Certainly the most successful
outside
club.
The Raw. Outside the Raw.
Well, yes. The most successful NPL club in Queensland by in recent years by a wide margin, and they are a quality team, and they've been on a fantastic run. I think they won their last 7 NPL Queensland games in a row and scoring loads of goals. So they're a serious outfit, and I hope we get a Lions derby between the Raw and the Lions. That'd be fun. But George, the other thing I really want to talk about today, George, is been lost in the noise a little bit, but it's the Paramount announcement that we're actually going to have a goal rush. We're going to have simultaneous A-League kickoffs on a Saturday night, 2 games together, and not only will we have free-to-air coverage of the main game, but the second game will also cut to and show highlights of, like the goal rush in the Premier League. I think this is a fantastic idea because it's really exciting to follow 2 fixtures at once, and it also is more free-to-air coverage on the main channel, and you also get less games in the hot afternoons in the summer. So the quality of football will increase by having more night fixtures. I think this is a real statement that Channel 10 are prepared to do a few things a bit differently.
I was going to say, one of the things you and I discussed very early on when we announced or heard the announcement about 10 CBS Viacom coming on board and taking over the game and making it theirs for the next 5 years in terms of broadcast and commercial opportunities. One of the things that you jumped on very quickly, you said it'll be very interesting to see just what they throw at it and how they go about it. Well, it shows you when you look at some of the things they're learning each and every week, each and every outlet, each and every opening. We saw 4 people in their coverage of the first Matildas game, or was it the Socceroos game? And now they've gone and lightened the load of the panel, given them a bit more prominence. With the Matildas, we saw Sarah Walsh, who knows the game very well and has been part of it for such a long time. We saw one of the young girls who did a tremendous job on Optus step in and has now become one of the hosts for 10. Mm-hmm. And we saw a former Matilda, giving us that unique perspective from the inside. So they're getting it right more often than not. And it tells me now with 10 Play, with Paramount Plus and with 10, the major platforms, the free-to-air platforms, that they're looking to showcase the game in a manner that we haven't seen for quite some time. And that even includes the early days of the SBS that literally flooded the space with football after football after football.
Well, George, speaking of former Matildas, we've got a Matildas legend waiting for us, so we better take a break. I'm going to address this lighting situation that makes me look like I'm playing first slip for the Australian Test team.
I thought that was the neatest looking virtual set of sunglasses you've had in years, but clearly it's not.
It looks like sun protection. It looks like I've zinced myself. But
Very good.
No,
I
just
like
to
it.
trigger the light, we'll fix that. We'll get Melissa Barbieri, assistant coach and player, goalkeeper for Melbourne City, to join us on the other side of this break. And then later on in the program, we will be chatting to Sam Lewis, as read in The Guardian, ESPN, The World Game, and now the ABC as well. She's got a piece coming out tomorrow about the centenary of women's football in Australia. The first organised game was played 100 years ago tomorrow between North Brisbane and South Brisbane. She's got a big piece coming up about that. And we're also going to review the Ireland versus Matildas match that happened in the early hours of Wednesday morning. So stick around for that.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website dkpco.com.au or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Since 1998, Lanco Group has been providing superior civil engineering solutions and advice to developers, local government and service authorities across Australia. Lanco Group is known for delivering sustainable, efficient solutions. By working closely with clients, Lanco Group is able to meet the complex infrastructure requirements for residential, commercial and industrial developments on time, on budget. Find out more at lancogroup.com.au. Lanco Group, your business partner for engineering solutions.
Buying your electricity from the big energy companies is now the most expensive way to power your home. In fact, the average electricity bill in Australia has more than doubled in the last 15 years, but not for the ones who went solar. Unlike your electricity bill, the price of solar has actually come down, and there's also government rebates available. So what are you waiting for? Join the 2 million households already saving hundreds of dollars every year. See how much your roof could be making you at solarpowerco.com.au. Go solar and get $500 cash back with the Solar Power Co, Australia's most trusted solar brand. solarpowerco.com.au.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website dkpco.com.au or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Since 1998, Lanco Group has been providing superior civil engineering solutions and advice to developers, local government and service authorities across Australia. Lanco Group is known for delivering sustainable, efficient solutions. By working closely with clients, Lanco Group is able to meet the complex infrastructure requirements for residential, commercial and industrial developments on time, on budget. Find out more at lancogroup.com.au. Lanco Group, your business partner for engineering solutions.
You're listening to to the state of our football nation on FNR.
George Danikian, Josh Parrish, and a very special guest. She's just signed back up with Melbourne City as the assistant to Rado Vidosic. And we're talking about a former member of the Matildas who, when she played, she only knew one thing. And that was to make sure that her net was kept without any goals in it and that her team won. And she didn't mind if it was scrappy. She didn't mind if it was tough. In fact, she won more than she lost, and it's great to have her with us. Melissa Barbieri, welcome to FNR. And I want to talk to you about the Matildas, and I want to talk to you about Melbourne City. Both platforms for me mean an awful lot. We've seen the Melbourne City girls fall the last couple of years to a combination of things, a changing of the guard, a whole bunch of new players. That takes time to develop. We've had some youngsters with great talent suffer some terrible injuries, and that also knocks you around. But the dynasty was set very early on, from very beginning. Joe Montemuro got a fantastic start when he took over the reins at Melbourne City, and the club introduced a W League side. And over the next 3 or 4 years, they became quite something. Rebecca Stott's back, Mel. Isn't that the most exciting news?
It is. It's just great to see her big smile back at the club. And, she's gone through a hell of a time over the last 12 months, but you can't fault her tenacity and her spirit and her open-heartedness and her vulnerability in showing her journey through being diagnosed with blood cancer, leukemia, then going through, the world's greatest shave and raising a huge amount of money for the Leukemia Foundation. She organised a website, Beat It by Stoddy. She's selling comfort bags for people who know somebody that's, been inflicted with a result of cancer.
Yeah.
So, that she's doing so many things and still huge smile on her face. And I'm sure the next few months will be testament to her character, because not only do you have to go through the depths of the illness, but come out with some great results in terms of being in remission, and then, plying your trade every day, day in, day out, especially after a little bit of a lockdown for her. It's going to be, one of those times where you think, is it all worth it? And at the end of the day, she's pushed through an Olympic campaign where she wasn't able to take the field with her New Zealand Ferns, and then putting on the City jersey again just means so much to her, because she's close to people that have helped her through this period. So,
look, it's a great story,
amazing.
And it's, as you touched on, there's so much more to be written. And
yes.
Did I mention? She's got another goal too. Not only being back in the Melbourne City blue, but she also wants to be a World Cup player for New Zealand.
Yeah, she wants to go back and don the football Fern jersey and go to 2023 World Cup. I mean,
wow.
It can be done, and other players have done it, and she takes a lot of inspiration from players like Jen Beattie, who was diagnosed with breast cancer, and there are just so many valiant and players that have just gone through these sorts of journeys, and she knows she can get there. She does.
By the way, did I ever mention to you that goalkeepers can play till they're very much older than field players?
Oh, I wouldn't have known that, George. But
I'm just saying, there's always an opportunity for a veteran keeper with all that nous, all that experience, to put a hand back up. Are you interested in playing on again, or are you are you very happy sitting next to Rado?
I'll play 90 minutes wherever I get them. Actually, I'd play a minute anywhere I'd get it.
Fantastic.
It's really, you can't take it out of me. Honestly, when you think about it, some people are like, don't you just want to sit down and have a beer at the end of the day? And I'm like, not yet. Not yet. We're not. When I get to the point where I'd rather have an alcoholic beverage, rather than eat well, sleep well, drink well, and then turn up to training the next day. I'll know it's over. But at the moment, it's not like that. And the only thing for me is it's the travel. It's being away from my family. It's not like being a male. I can't just uproot everyone.
I hear you.
And if my husband could, be my handbag,
you mean
because I earn so much money, then he would gladly give that up. I mean, when I met him, the first 5 weeks of our relationship, I went away to a World Cup. So
hang on, Melissa, haven't I told you before? Absence always makes the heart grow fonder.
Yeah, but absence of money doesn't help.
Okay, all right. Josh, you know more about that than I do.
Well, speaking of money, I actually wanted to ask you about the new CBA that's come in, because year after year, it seems in the W League, we're seeing sort of incremental improvements for W League players in terms of their pay and the conditions and the facilities. What do you make of the new CBA agreement, and how much has it changed in the space of time that you've been a professional?
Well, I've been playing not only in this W League. This is my 11th season in the W League. I missed two, one for having a baby and one for having a knee reconstruction.
Yeah, we remember.
But other than that, I've been in every one, and I've only played 77 games.
See?
So this is ridiculous, because if I was a male, I'd have more games. If it was incrementally, it's happening incrementally. I played in the NSL before that, so the Ansett Summer Series. I've been in the national leagues in Australia since 1996. I think my first.
I think that may well have been the last year of Ansett. No,
the first. I was in the start. I was in the start of Ansett.
I think that was the last year when the airline fell over.
Oh yeah, the last 3 years of their existence, we took them down.
No, you didn't. So
would you still to this day have more Matildas caps than W League appearances?
Yes.
That's just crazy.
And it's like, because I would have to play W League and then I would play 20, sometimes up to 27 games for NPL during the year. So I've racked up the NPL games, no problem. I'd be like, no one ever claims how many Barbieri has in the bank, because you probably can't count that far. So we just let it bye. And unfortunately for goalkeepers, a lot of goalkeepers are in the league for 4 or 5 years and they don't even get a cap yet. So being a keeper is also extra hard. 86 caps for Australia, but we never get subbed on. We never get the little ones here and there. But I wanted to I was trying to make a point of, I've been in the league for so long, so I've actually seen where we used to have to pay to play in the nationals, thousands of dollars.
Yep.
And then we didn't have to pay anything, but we also didn't get paid. So many of us were on the dole. I was a BP console operator at the local petrol station. Many baristas, so many girls tried to do what they could. I ended up having to go on the dole because I couldn't hold down a job because no one would give me one. Then I ended up at a primary school with a super cool legend of a principal that said, you know what, we'll just take you on, mate. They asked the ladies in the office, they said, she's an Australian soccer player. We're going to have to help her through when she needs time off. What do you think? Wow. And they're all like, yay, no problems. But without that school, I would have not had a job for 10 years. But now I get to say, I work as a footballer, albeit for less time than I would like because of the shortness of the season, but still for those, 3 to 6 months, you get an adequate wage where you can actually ply your trade every day. Like, some people still work because they want to continue what they're doing and keep that work alive. But other than that, we're in a position where females can actually say, I hold down a second job, or I hold down a job as a footballer. And that's amazing. I want my daughter or somebody in her position to be able to say, rather than working at Coles, I can play football on the weekend, a couple of training sessions, and earn a wage, a part-time wage or a casual wage or something like that.
The negativity of this short season can be a plus if you're good enough to play overseas.
100%.
Because there's no overlap there, or there's minimum overlap. So you can be a very attractive proposition to clubs overseas. And we've seen a number of our Matildas actually do that over the last, I suppose, half a dozen years. But we understand, Josh and I have spoken about this before, we think the minimum of 30 games would be tremendous, because it'd give you an opportunity to have a career, make a salary, and at the same time, grow your game.
Yes. And also, as long as there is an academy set up for the females, because I don't know about sitting on the bench for 30 games, George. You know, like if I don't have a youth team or something to drop down to and continue to get games, it's not really attractive for a lot of players.
Yep.
And building up into that sort of system. And I think the girls are all coming from NPL anyway now. So
is that gap getting smaller?
Unfortunately, I'm going to say something really probably be about going to upset a few people. Unfortunately, in some cases, players have been told that certain NPL states are not worth playing in. So it reduces the talent in those states. I'm not going to name which states. And then a lot of the better players go and play in one state, and it makes that state amazing. So if you can read between my lines, is that if we have a situation where all states are recognized as formidable leagues, more girls can play, they can get better because they're around better players, and we don't have that huge gap. And so now we've got lots of NPL players coming through the ranks and playing and being watched and things, and we can have the W League for longer, because those are the girls that make up the majority of the teams.
And I guess we're not even catering for players that play overseas anymore. Not really.
We can't.
There's very little presence in the NWSL for Australians. I think it's Chloe Lagazzo still plays there, but there's very few. And there's some players in Scandinavia who I think there's a bit of overlap, but not entirely, so they can potentially come back for a bit. Obviously, with travel restrictions at the moment, that's not impossible. But like the vast majority are playing in leagues where it directly clashes with the W League, so that shouldn't be a consideration anymore. That kind of bit part.
Exactly, and credit to Tom Samani. He built the leagues so that players could do double, so that they could actually play. But it was written in our contracts, if you play overseas, you must be able to play W League. You must play W League. So that's how we built it. So that was in our contract. You must play. And then it became, and then Emily Van Egmond, she wanted she got offered from Germany, and she wanted to go play over, and so did Tamika. She got asked for Sweden and all these.
And Norway, I think, were too, isn't it?
Yeah, they just started getting names, especially because we turned up at World Cups. These young players were cheap options, but very good players. You know, all you had to do was house them, feed them, and you had pretty good, quality players. And then suddenly we started to say, no, we can't have that in our contract anymore. We've got to be able to play, and we've got to be able to choose. So that started to happen. And once we opened the door to that, and Europe started calling for a lot of girls, because also the Forcel started changing how they picked people, because it was like you could only play in the Forcel if you had 75% of national team games under your belt for that year.
Yeah.
So somebody like Emily Gilnick, for example, she wanted to go play for Liverpool. She couldn't, because at that stage she was a fringe player, got called into camps but never got a game.
Wow.
So she wasn't able to get a contract with Liverpool. and of course they've dropped down, and now she's in there. But all those sorts of things we have to contend with as female footballers. It just really limits us in what we can do and what we can't do. And so when we look at the W League moving forward, we've added a team and we're going to add 2 more. But is that going to be sufficient? So yes, is it more important to have more players playing or the same amount of players playing more games?
Yes, more games, always.
So they're saying you're still getting more games, just not a full home and away season, which will come.
Yeah.
So
well, you got
incrementally bigger.
You got a bigger pool now with Wellington coming in and saying they're going to have a W League side, which is super exciting. Tell me, what have you made of the facilities at Casey with Melbourne City?
Mate, there's so much land out there. It's ridiculous. There's so much land. Everything is brand new. Everything is lovely. The grass, the artificial, all amenities are brand spanking new. The people are lovely. They just want to help. They want to be a part of everything. And, they're all our fans are out there. It's amazing. And, we're still in the building phase. So there's a couple of things where we're trying to navigate where we're going to set up but there's so much potential out there. It's really, it's such a great move for the club. It's really exciting. And I can't wait to be able to get out into the community and have people come and watch. And, these COVID restrictions are just really dousing the flame that really could catch fire out there.
I mentioned we had a dynasty with the W League side. We've had so many wins and titles, which is great. What did you make of the men finally getting over the hurdle and proving themselves last year?
Oh, it was amazing. It's great to see because I've been a Heart fan for a long time. Mr. Van Schip helped me train with Butzer, Clint Bolton.
Yeah.
They helped me train. So it was very much, a long time coming. And when you see the ins and outs, and we really are a family. I know how people think, oh, you just say that. No, we are. We are. It's very hard not to hug people in COVID times. I tell you now, when you see people that you haven't seen for a long time, it's really, really, really tough to just fist bump. We really are a family. We love each other. We see each other in the hallways. We use the same gyms. When you see the amount of effort and the amount of preparation and the planning and everything come to fruition, it's lovely. It's absolutely lovely. And then to have such nice people get what they deserve is amazing.
Well, Barbs, we'll have to leave it there because we've got Sam Lewis waiting patiently for us. But it's fantastic to chat to you. You've taught me a few things that I didn't know today about the history of Australian women's football. Sam's about to do the same on the other side of this break. But I just want to say I'm so glad that Melbourne City have somebody at their disposal with the experience and wisdom that you have, so that you've got the knowledge to guide young female footballers through the labyrinthine world of these contracts and these playing situations that you have to navigate. It's great to have you on FNR, and it's so great to have you involved in the game.
I appreciate that, Josh. Thanks, George, as well.
I echo those words, and I just love the fact that the fire still burns brightly, and old goalkeepers, they just don't want to quit, and I love that even more about you, Melissa. Thank you very much.
Just call me Bubs Buffon.
Oh, what a good idea.
Fantastic.
Listen, look forward to seeing you through the season, and if you need anything, let us know, okay?
Thanks, guys.
You're welcome anytime. Bubs, we'll take a short break. Sam Lewis on the other side talking about the Matildas versus Ireland game and the centenary of organised women's football in Australia. That date is tomorrow. First ever match played in 1921 in Brisbane. Sam's going to give us the scoop on that on the other side of this break here on the State of Our Football Nation on FNR.
Buying your electricity from the big energy companies is now the most expensive way to power your home. In fact, the average electricity bill in Australia has more than doubled in the last 15 years, but not for the ones who went solar. Unlike your electricity bill, the price of solar has actually come down, and there's also government rebates available. So what are you waiting for? Join the 2 million households already saving hundreds of dollars every year. See how much your roof could be making you at solarpowerco.com.au. Go solar and get $500 cash back with the Solar Power Co, Australia's most trusted solar brand. solarpowerco.com.au.
Since 1998, Lanco Group has been providing superior civil engineering solutions and advice to developers, local government and service authorities across Australia. Lanco Group is known for delivering sustainable, efficient solutions. By working closely with clients, Lanco Group is able to meet the complex infrastructure requirements for residential, commercial and industrial developments on time, on budget. Find out more at lancogroup.com.au. Lanco Group, your business partner for engineering solutions.
You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR.
From Babs Buffon, Melissa Barbieri to Samantha Lewis. Welcome to FNR. That's some sort of act you've got to follow.
Sure is. I'm not claiming that I'm ever going to live up to it. That's fine.
Listen, welcome to the show, State of Our Football Nation. A huge milestone coming up tomorrow. A great many people may not be aware, but the women's game has had quite some history, and we need to acknowledge it. We need to pay homage, and we need to give the next generation of youngsters a real idea that the game started 100 years ago, 1921, just before I was born.
1921, yes, it was a very different time, George, as I'm sure you can attest to.
Wow. I can tell you, 1921, my forebears were fleeing Ottoman Turkey and trying to find a new sanctuary for themselves. That was 100 years ago. You know, extraordinary times. The world was in upheaval. The Great War had come, and it was interesting to think that. What was the first game? It was.
So the first game was between two teams in Brisbane North and Brisbane South, made up of a bunch of players from a bunch of different teams that were just sort of starting to exist in and around Brisbane at the time. But the reason that this game is so important is because it was really the first sort of formalised game of women's football that had been organised in any state in the country. So there had been sort of kick around games here and there for a little bit longer, but 1921, the 24th of September, is the date that everyone acknowledges as the first official game.
Wow.
So I've read the newspaper report of the match, which is rather condescendingly titled "Bells on the Ball," as you might imagine. How is this sort of spectacle received by the Brisbane public?
It was incredible. It drew 10,000 fans to the match. Yeah, and this was the interesting thing about women's football in the 20s, just after the First World War, is actually it was really popular, particularly over in the United Kingdom. There was a team, famously the Dick Kerr ladies team, who would sell out stadiums like Goodison Park in England, attracting tens of thousands of fans. They would raise a lot of money for charity. They would travel continentally to do tours. The Dick Kerr ladies even went to the United States for a tour at one point. And I think a part of that does have to connect with the effect of the war. There was a bit of a vacuum that was created when a lot of men had to join the defence forces to fight overseas. So as women started to move into factories, they started to move into other forms of paid work. They also started to move into sport, and football was, particularly in and around Europe, was the sport of choice. It was the sport that most of them gravitated towards. But unfortunately, because of attitudes that existed at the time and still do exist in regards to women participating in male spaces and male structures, there was a ban that was enacted in the mid-1921, which effectively banned women from playing the game. It didn't. The ban was interesting because it banned women from participating in football on organised fields, so on association pitches, which basically just meant that they couldn't play on the pitch that was owned by any club. So they were relegated to backyards, to public parks, other sorts of green spaces. They basically were banned from the game, and that ban lasted for 50 years. So when we think about women's football, it's important to remember this context that actually we're starting from a really far place back. It's a 50-year handicap is what women's football has had to try and make up over the space of quite a small amount of time recently.
When you put it like that, the overtures that we're seeing right now, the movement that we're seeing right now with organisations like CBS, Viacom and 10, and Combank coming in and making a real statement by saying they're going to be major sponsors, and you see a Women's World Cup around the corner, you start to realise that you may have had 50 years with a handbrake on, but the handbrake is off. And there are some great people who understand full well the enormous potential. Josh and I have spoken about the word potential time and time again. It means nothing until it's realised. There's an enormous opportunity before us, and it starts with your story tomorrow, huh?
Sure does, yeah. And it's interesting that you use the word handbrake. That's a metaphor that's used by one of the women that I interview for a piece for ABC tomorrow, a woman named Fiona Crawford. Yeah.
Wow.
So Fiona Crawford is a co-author of a book called Never Say Die, the 100-year overnight success of Australian women's football. I have a copy here. And I interviewed Fiona as part of a quite a long piece that I've got coming out with ABC tomorrow, celebrating the centenary of the first game. And she talks about that. She talks about the fact that in the 20s, people were interested. Women's football has always been something that people were interested in. But the problem has been that they haven't had the structures around them to really make them flourish. So even though people they want to watch the game, for such a long time, they haven't been able to. Women's football has been played in ways and in structures that has made it really difficult for people to get involved. And so a big part of the sort of the meteoric rise of women's football, particularly since the 2019 Women's World Cup, has been visibility, has been accessibility, and has been financial support. So now all of these kinds of things that the men's game has had for decades, women's football are now starting to be given the same sort of structural support as what their peers have got. And that's why we're starting to finally see it flourish. And all of these fans are flocking to watch a game that they have always been interested in, but they've just never had access to.
Samantha, the thing that fascinates me is my first organised football was in Sydney, in the eastern suburbs, and Mrs. Davies and Mrs. Her surname eludes me at the moment, but it was their two FJ Holdens that would roll up. All the kids they'd come to each of our homes and pick us up because they gave validation to our parents that we wouldn't get lost, we'd be in safe hands. And can I tell you, they organised everything. Each and every Saturday morning from 7 o'clock in the morning through till 3 in the afternoon, women ran our game. Women organised our game, and they were the most wonderful. Mrs. Peters was the other one, and they were marvellous. And can I tell you, the days before seatbelts, so we had kids, too many of them in an FJ Holden. And if you opened the boot, you had footballs, you had shirts, you had socks, you had shorts, you had 4 million oranges for half time. And so for me, women have always played a very strong role in the game. And when I reflect on what you're saying, it's shameful behaviour that the women's game was denied an opportunity to grow all those years ago, and to think that there were 50 years that damn handbrake on. Oh, look, let's get the handbrake well and truly off. Melissa Barbieri wouldn't wear it. She's another one of these who would say, never.
I'm curious about, and probably logic's the wrong word, but I'm curious about the logic of the ban, because you have this match with 10,000 people attending, and then suddenly it's deemed, I don't know, too dangerous, too much of a threat. Is there any reasoning given for the ban being put in place?
Yeah, there are a couple of different reasons. The one that Fiona says is that behind the scenes, the men who were in control of football more generally were a little bit threatened because the women's game was starting to attract money. It was starting to attract sponsors. It was starting to attract investment. And that was money that the men's game wanted. And so you sort of, when there's only so much pie to go around, the people who are in charge of the knives and forks, they make strategic decisions. But outside of that, there are also sort of larger attitudes towards women's participation in sport, particularly from a medical perspective. So there were assumptions, for example, that women participating in rough or masculine sports would affect their fertility, their ability to become mothers, their reproduction. Exactly. Their larger stereotypical roles in culture. And so they were sort of guided towards more feminine kinds of sports like netball, like swimming, tennis. Like tennis, gymnastics, swimming, sports and activities that were deemed a little bit more ladylike. They weren't threatening to the body, and they weren't threatening to the image of a woman either, because you see images of women playing really rough sports, sometimes like football, but also like rugby. And, it looks dangerous. It looks scary sometimes because like women are people and we're going to run at each other, and we love that. But for a lot of the men who were in control of making these decisions, they didn't like that image of women. They had a very particular, very narrow view of what a woman was. And if you stepped outside of that view, if you stepped outside of that box, that was a big cultural taboo. It's a big no-no. And so they had to try and squeeze them back in and try and make them a little bit more conforming to the expectations of the time.
Now, I haven't read your article yet because it's not out yet, but does it touch upon the lifting of the ban? That's probably a whole other story in itself.
It is a whole other story in itself. It started again, well, the ban came in the UK and it ended in the UK and it filtered across the colonies, basically. So Australia didn't have quite the same kind of ban on association pitches as what the UK did. But the thing that transferred over to us was the attitudes. So a lot of the men who were part of federations and part of associations, they relegated women and basically made them structurally made it almost impossible for them to participate anyway. They wouldn't give them the resources. They wouldn't give them the coaches. They wouldn't give them the fields. They wouldn't give them the stuff that they needed. They weren't technically banned, but everything around that made it really difficult for them to participate. But when the ban was lifted, which was 50 years later in 1971, a large part of that came from sort of the grassroots work of lots of people in the UK, particularly lots of male allies and others in the women's football community. And the reason it was lifted was pretty much because people were like, this is sexist. Like, this is not right. Women want to participate in sport just as much as men do. And finally, there was a critical mass of people that were unignorable. But the fact that it took 50 years for that chorus of people to work up enough noise for that ban to be lifted, and also for people at the decision-making level to start to listen to that chorus of voices. The fact that it took 50 years is pretty shameful. And you have to wonder, had that 50 years been filled with the same kind of momentum and energy and investment as what the men's game has, imagine where the women's game would be now.
Well, Melissa gave us a clue. We'd have a fuller program, we'd have longer seasons, and we'd have more substantial opportunities for young women to drive a career and fire themselves to go and participate in major contests around the world. Look, watching Australia, Matildas, especially at the Olympics, was magnificent. And 3 o'clock in the morning, no problem. 12 o'clock at night, no problem. People will watch. And some of the great drama that our Matildas have managed to, create has been quite magical. And as I've said, Josh and I have discussed this a number of times. I think the Matildas can lead a revolution in this country. Gustafsson's got a tremendous responsibility, but as does everybody on the pitch. There's a tremendous chance. The network now 10 and CBS, Viacom, and the streaming platforms that they're adding to this are giving everyone a chance. There'll be no more excuses. 20, 30 years ago, I was a part of a television network that showcased football for the very first time. That is the World Game. And Bruce Gingell, our first MD, was brave enough and bold enough and arrogant enough to say to the assembled media at the time, yes, SBS. And for all of you thinking, that means soccer, bloody soccer. So he went after it. He wasn't a shrinking flower. And I think we saw the emergence of this feminist and a very active, generation of women, and it's been a tremendous journey. But there's so much more to come, and we've got 2 years for a Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand. And let me tell you, the forces are gathering, business-wise, media-wise, and to see yourself and others not only embracing and telling a great story, and Lord knows we need more storytellers, and to tell the better stories. There are, Trixie Tagg, some of those great, Matildas who come before. We keep talking about, we're there only because we've stood on the shoulders of champions. Well, I bet the last 100 years, you could put a list of champion women who've made a fantastic contribution to the game, and there's still more to come.
Absolutely. And that's the importance of celebrating moments like the centenary, is thinking back to all the women who've been part of getting to the women's game to where it is now. And as part of my piece tomorrow with ABC, one of the sections interviews a woman named Sue Monteith, who was part of the first ever Matildas team in the mid-1970s. She captained the Matildas for a long time as well during the 70s and 80s. And, she, for a really long time, went completely uncelebrated. No one knew who she was. A lot of her students, she works as a school teacher, and a lot of her students didn't even know that she played for the Matildas. And when I did a lot of research about a couple of other history pieces that I'd written, I learned that some of the earliest Matildas didn't have a single photo of themselves playing for the national team. So this is why moments like this are really important, and why it's so great to see that so many state federations and Football Australia are starting to gather some really interesting storytelling content. Like Football Queensland, for example, I think have been really impressive in this space. They're hosting an event over the weekend to commemorate the first women's game. They're actually recreating it with 2 women's teams. They've got keynote speakers, they've got jerseys, they've got a big mural that they're going to build in order to pay respect and pay homage to all of the women, as you said before, that have come before them, not just in terms of players, but also in terms of administrators, in terms of the women who cut up the oranges and open the canteen and scrub the boots and feed the kids. Women have been part of football for its entire history, but it's only in the last sort of 20 years, maybe even less than that, that we've actually started to seriously acknowledge them.
Well, we've got sidetracked by the historical discussion today, and I think rightly so, especially after what Bubs had to say to us. But before we let you go, Sam, what were your main takeaways from Ireland 3, Australia 2 on Wednesday morning? Still a few question marks around this current team that are yet to be resolved?
Yeah, I think so. But also, it was just a bit of a yuck game. FNR regular Marissa Lordanic described it as the 4 a.m. kickoff of games. It was just yuck. It was tired. It was scrappy. The goals were crap. There were so many deflections. There was an own goal by our own goalkeeper, Mackenzie Arnold. It was just a bit of a yuck game. And to be honest, I feel like as Australian football fans, we tend to place a little bit too much importance on games like this sometimes. Like Gustafsson, I think, is a really excellent coach, because when he talks to us about his job and about this Matildas, he puts it in the larger context of a project. So one of the big questions that's been hanging over the Matildas for a really long time has been depth. It has been, who do we have coming through these ranks in order to replace this golden generation? And a big part of Gustafsson's project over the next 3 years is trying to answer that question. So even though, the performance was crap, we were missing a bunch of really important players from the Olympics. 8 of the players, in fact, who went to Tokyo weren't in this squad. We've also had 2 retirements of 2 key veterans in that time. We had a bunch of debutants make their first appearances for the Matildas, to the point where by the end of full time, almost half of the team on the field had 10 caps or fewer, including 3 who got their first. So these are good positive moves, I think, because it shows that Gustafsson is trying to answer these questions. A lot of the players that he brought into this particular camp were defensive players, because that's an area of the field where we're having struggles. So we're seeing the process. So we're seeing him trying to figure out how to answer these kinds of questions that we've all been asking for a long time. So even though we do have a bit of a crappy result like this, I think we can take some bigger, broader learnings from it and actually start to put things in context and be like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. He's explaining it to us. And we're starting to see the emergence of some really talented players. Mary Fowler, for example, she scored both of our goals. She's an absolutely sensational player. She is the future of the Matildas, but it's not until Gustafsson came in that she really got a serious look in. And look how she's flourished. Same as Tegan Micah. Tegan Micah was absolutely incredible throughout the Olympics, and she only got her first look in during the pre-Olympic friendlies. So we're starting to see some of these questions be answered. And by the time we get to 2023, which is the ultimate goal, hopefully a lot of them will have already been answered. And we're going to, as you said before, George, we're going to make a serious statement with this incredible Matildas team on home soil at a World Cup and catapult the women's game to the next level.
Samantha, you're 100% right. This challenge right now is to get this mix. You know, someone once said, it was a coach, I think his name was Mourinho. He said, putting a team together is like a puzzle. And what Gustafsson's got to do, he's got to decide how much of the defense he can absolutely trust and how much of the creative element he can give them enough instruction and set in place a type of game to play. And then he wants the front line to go and attack with real venom. The Swedes did it with great aplomb. The Canadians have come forward in the last 3 or 4 years. It's our turn. And if we want to take on the world, you've got to play everybody. And I don't care if we lost to Ireland. What did we learn? And you said it earlier. There were 3 or 4 young women who came on. How proud would they have been, and their families, to see them making their debut? Miss Beard, you could see her. She was going to go through. The first person that came at her at that challenge was like, it was committed. It was focused, and she looked great. I didn't see any sidestepping.
Tony Gustafsson was actually really stoked with Angie Beard's debut, which is fabulous. She's been so great for Melbourne Victory. Yeah, over the course of the last few years in the W League. And he called her performance brave. And that's something that I absolutely agree with. She plays with bravery. She played with passion. And when we were talking to Tony post-game, he said that was largely something that the team was lacking. It was not the kind of energy, it wasn't the kind of vibe that we're used to from the Matildas. But when it came to certain individual players, like a Beard, like a Fowler, and even like a Kara Cooney-Cross, these young players, these debut players, these were players who were playing and giving everything that they had. They were playing with that passion. They were playing with that identity and that spirit of the Matildas. So it's really good to see that has translated to these younger players, to these fringe players as well. It shows that it's not something that's exclusive to this core group who've been together for a really long time, like your Sam Kerrs or your Emily Van Egmonds. It's rippling out across the rest of the community, and it's something that more women can start to be part of. So that's really exciting. I mean, the other noteworthy thing I think mentioning is that it was Sam Kerr's 100th cap, which was, I mean, it's probably not a game that she would want to remember very fondly because of the performance, but
yellow card.
Yeah, there was a great tweet actually of someone saying, "Oh, isn't that nice of the ref? The ref got her a card for her 100th cap."
Touche. Oh,
so like Sam Kerr's been part of the Matildas since she was 15. So this is over a decade now. And I just think it's a really nice kind of parallel between the fact that she earned her 100th cap while we saw 3 debut players in the same game. I think there's something really lovely about that. So,
and perhaps a tiny mark of the incremental progress we've made is at the very least, all of those debutantes will have lots of photos of themselves actually playing for the team, unlike back in the day.
Indeed.
In HD.
Yes, plenty of coverage.
Samantha,
Sam,
good luck tomorrow.
Thank you. Please read it. Please click. All clicks and comments and shares are very much appreciated. And please engage with all the other kinds of celebrations that are happening through official football channels as well. It's a really great learning opportunity for all of us to dig back into our own history, not just the history of the women's game, but the history of football in Australia, because that's what we're part of.
Can you make a promise? Come back to us on a regular basis throughout the year, and let's talk about how the women's game is growing and the stories. We talked about it earlier, and you touched on it. You concurred. We've got to be better storytellers. Let's tell better stories about the women's game as we head to the Women's World Cup. Yeah?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Love it. Fantastic.
Right.
Samantha Lewis.
Everyone go read Sam's piece for the ABC tomorrow. And to continue the theme, coming up next is If You Know Your History. Paul Mavridis is going to be talking to Peter Eadie. So we're diving even deeper into the centenary of organised women's football in Australia. Sam, thanks so much for making the time.
Thanks for having me back, guys. Hope to see you soon.
You're listening to the state of our football nation on FNR.